Hi friends, it's Michelle from Quimby Cottage Knits in Michigan. I am MK Hansen on Ravelry or Quimby Cottage on Instagram. I'm so glad you're here today. I have missed you. I know that during the season, the Advent season, there are a lot of knitters who do Vlogmas. They do the Vlogmas, and first of all, I was only able to commit to watching one all the way through. There were a couple that I started out watching, but I couldn't commit to finishing them all. I only watched one. So if I can't commit to watching them, there's no way I could commit to making one. But even if I could, you guys would not want to watch it. It's so boring. Anyway, let's not go into that. But I did find myself, I don't know, during that season of Vlogmas, I try to put myself on a social media diet. I ask myself regularly, do I want to create or do I want to consume? And I kind of say that to myself when I fall into an Instagram rabbit hole, or when I find myself on Ravelry looking at other people's knitting more than I'm getting my own knitting done. And sometimes that is really a challenge for me. That's just what I do. I ask myself, do I want to consume or do I want to create? And then I try to make an appropriate decision at that moment with my time. I also, though, notice there's a lot of people who do like filters and lots of makeup and stuff like that. And I always look at those people and think, wow, like they have amazing skin and they have all these things. And then sometimes I find myself like Googling makeup, and I know that that's not who I am. So I am wearing makeup today for you all because I'm super excited to actually get dressed. So eyebrow pencil. I know you guys aren't here for this, but I just feel like I need to tell you. Eyebrow pencil, under eye concealer, mascara, a little bit of lip gloss. That's it. Like this melasma here. Yeah, that's my actual melasma. Melasma is the fancy word for age spots, but I feel like melasma sounds better. Right? And then you saw all those, like I have my wrinkles and I have my Angry 11 that I use when I mean business. Are you ready? That's for when I mean business, the Angry 11. I try to only take that out for business times. And I'm noticing a new wrinkle right here. I don't know why I'm doing this. Do we want to talk about this? Okay, I'll leave it in, but if it's like too much, let's just take it out for next time. Sometimes well, as you can see, I haven't talked to any friends in a really long time. I'm really glad you're here with me today. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was my knitting. Let's talk about my knitting from 2020. I don't usually do this, but I think it might be good for me to think about when I tell you that I want to create versus consume. I would like to be a more thoughtful creator. I don't just want to create for creating's sake. So I want to be more thoughtful about what I use. I want to be more thoughtful about what I need, what I wear, things like that. So I just needed to spend some time on that. So annually, for the last couple of years, what I have done is when I do my Ravelry projects, and I'm pretty good at doing a Ravelry project page. When I do my Ravelry projects, I tag. And so I tag according to what I might be the most interested in knowing later. So for example, everything that I made in 2020, I tagged with 2020 so that I would know that I made it in 2020. And then I also tag like sweaters and hats, accessories, socks, that kind of thing, so that I can later say, okay, all my socks, and then I can sort them. Not that I do that, but I do create a little bundle for the last few years of what I've made in 1 year. And I've noticed that as I've gotten to be a sweater knitter, the number of projects that I've made has gone down. So I just think that these are just interesting things for me to know about myself. I'm not in competition. I don't want you to be in competition. I'm just taking a few minutes to reflect on what I've accomplished last year. And then, maybe you'll do that too. And then we'll decide if we want to set goals for ourselves next year. It's just a way for us to stop for a minute and be thoughtful and then do whatever we want with our thoughts. So this isn't meant to be judgy or tell you what to do or start a competition or anything like that. It's not what this is about. So last year I made 32 projects. This year I made 33. So what that tells me is that the pandemic didn't do anything for my knitting, which is fine because I also started taking some online classes for development, which is just a fancy word for fundraiser. And it's a college level course. It took a lot of my time, and it's not something that I know anything about. So there was a lot of new vocabulary for me and a lot of new concepts that were hard for me to grasp because there's a lot of like financial investment type pieces to that I don't really understand. So I'm going to continue to do that into next spring. My first class starts pretty soon on the 18th of January. So I will be busy with that, and I don't know how much knitting I'll get done, or big picture knitting, you know, sweaters and things like that take a lot of my mental energy. I'm pretty easy. I can knit a sock really without thinking about it. So that's pretty much a go-to. I usually have a sock going, at least one sock going. So let's talk some more about knitting. First, let me talk about what I have finished since the last time we talked, and then I'll talk about what I'm knitting on now, and then I will talk about my 2020 knitting. So that's how it's going to go. First, I want to tell you that I finished 2 things since we last talked. One was I got the most wonderful package in the mail in November from 2 very generous knitters, and it was a knitting advent calendar, and I was overwhelmed and I cried because that kind of thing doesn't happen to me usually. I'm typically the giver, so I'm working on being a receiver. So this advent calendar was really beautiful. First of all, it was 24 packages, and inside each was a small ball of yarn and then a treat of some kind, like a chocolate, or in one case, buttons, or a tea, which I barely got to sample any of the teas because my daughter took off with them. But I will tell you this, David's teas, I didn't know. And now, good thing I have a birthday in February because I think I'm going to be splurging on some of those. Anyway, I really enjoyed Advent knitting. I knitted a little bit every day, which I loved doing. It only took 10 or 15 minutes to do the knitting, which felt very doable for me every day, 10 or 15 minutes, either at the beginning of the day or more likely for me at the end of the day. I didn't have a pattern. I just, in my head, did some things. And so this is what they look like. These are dirty. I've worn them like since Christmas. I'm not wearing any socks today, but I've worn these since Christmas. So this is what they look like. They don't match, which I kind of think is awesome. This was my first one, and what I did was I knitted all of this in ribbing because I figured, you know, who doesn't need ribbing? And then I just knitted, I think I knitted 10 rows each here, but I like a regular basic heel. So I did that, the flap heel flap. But I didn't really count on the fact that that doesn't actually add any knitting. So then I knitted, and then around here I discovered that I needed to knit them longer. So what I did was I just went back and picked some of these yarns and then did another stripe here. So this day of knitting was pretty long. This is day 11. And then this was day 12, the toe. So isn't that great? Okay, and then this one I figured out that I really needed more like 12 or 15 rows in order to do that. And then I also needed to count, because I needed more length in the foot, I made these all a little longer, and I only did, as you'll see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colors, and then the 6th was the heel. Whereas in this one I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the 7th, day 7 was the heel. So I figured that out. So this one is more, you know, solid. When I say solid, what I mean is this one is more even. These are even. But of all of these colors, like every day I was like, oh, I love this. Oh, I love this. Oh, I love this. Every single day I loved each color more. But can I just tell you, this was my favorite color of all time. And the dyer doesn't make it anymore. Isn't that sad? I loved this. I just, like, look, I just couldn't get enough of that. Look at that. Every stitch, it's just so fun. And it's kind of, it's not really a gray and it's not really a brown. It's kind of that grayish, which I think looks really good on most people. So I also love this, and I love that these two are together because I love these two. I did a few more rows of this because I liked how it was flashing. So I did take the time to enjoy the knitting every day. I also love this, and I loved it next to this, these two together. I just loved. So this was really a great project and really great fun. And the generous knitters who gave that to me were Remembrances Pottery, Natalie, and the Tangled Stitch, Kelly, and it was such a gift to have this year. So I loved this. And now I'm tempted to make a knitting advent calendar for friends. So watch out. I also finished my Scrappy sock. So remember what I was doing was knitting one row with one scrap color and then one with another. And I just did that all the way down, one row of each. And that's how these turned out. I'm very pleased with them. They could be my size, but they also could be gift size. So they haven't been worn yet. And I don't typically block socks. I know you guys, a lot of podcasters have beautiful sock blockers, but I just feel like your foot is the best blocker. And so I just don't block socks unless they're color work, in which case I use wires, and maybe I should get sock blockers for those socks. I'll have to think on that. But for now, I just let your feet do the blocking. So I don't really block socks. If I was going to block them, I would just give them a wash and then pat them dry in this shape, because fine. But I just don't see why I would do that. I don't understand why I would do that. Anyway, these are another pair of Scrappy socks. So I finished these also. The other day, Mr. Hansen got it in his mind that we needed to drive over and see our uncle who's widowed. And we were going to bring him a bunch of treats. It's about a 2.5-hour drive. Yeah. But he's alone, totally alone. So we went over with a bunch of treats, and we planned just to drop them off for him and then wave at him through the garage. We got about halfway there and discovered that we'd forgotten the bag of treats. I know, par for the course for us. So we continued anyway. We got there, and he stood in his garage, and then we stood a car's length plus whatever that space is. So a good distance, and we wore masks. And we spent about 10 or 15 minutes in the garage with him, and then we drove home. Yes, we did all that. Anyway, I had just finished my Scrappy socks, and so I didn't have any socks on the needles. But this was sort of a spur of the moment event, so I didn't have time to wind new yarn. So I just grabbed a bag of scraps, which I didn't bring here. Incidentally, I'm podcasting today from my bedroom because my whole family is home, and we have one of those open concept houses. So when I usually podcast, I sit in the living room, and everybody can hear everything that's going on. And I feel a little self-conscious talking about my knitting with my family because they don't get it. It's not like us when we talk. So I'm in my bedroom today, which is why it looks really weird. And also, like, strange that a door is like right there, but this is the best angle of my bedroom, I promise. Well, and the lights, the windows are right there, so that makes the knitting look best. So anyway, I just grabbed a bag of scraps, just a Ziploc bag of patterned scraps that I had, and I just started knitting. So what I did was, I've really been enjoying knitting like this. I saw this. I had a couple, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I started knitting the cuff different than the rest, which I had seen, I think, on a pair of Susan B. Anderson socks. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that's so great. I love doing that. So I have a few pairs of socks like that. But then recently I have been seeing, I think it's Summerly Knits does a lot of times a cream for the heel, toe, and cuff. And I really love that. So I have been doing that too. I just love that look, especially on a Scrappy sock, because I think it kind of pulls it all together. So what I did was I just took a bunch of scraps, and I did 9 rows of knitting, and then the next row would be row 10, but that's the 10th row is the color, right? The ones that are on the needle, that I count that as 10. So I've just been doing that all the way down. And this is the first sock, and then I started the second, and I'm now to where I need to do the heel. And obviously I need to do some end weaving in here. But so they don't match perfectly, but they're cousins. They're close enough, I think, for me. And I have really been enjoying this. Incidentally, I decided to time myself. Out of curiosity, I wanted to know how long it takes me to knit a sock. I did this one time when I first started knitting socks, and I figured it took me 9 hours to knit a sock. And I'm not sure if that's really the same now. It took 3 minutes to knit each of these twisted stitch rows, and there are 11 rows here, so that's 33 minutes. And then I timed myself, and each of these sections took 21 minutes to knit. So far into this sock, I have about 5 hours. Let me back up. it's 5 hours to knit this, but I didn't calculate this fish lips kiss heel or the toe. So I'm paying attention on this one. And what I'll do is I won't start knitting this heel until I have time to knit the whole heel. And I will set a timer on my phone and then just knit the heel and then stop. And I'll add that to the overall time of the sock. And I'll do the same thing when it gets to the toe. And this is just, again, for my own, it's fun for me to know what that is. And also I kind of like the idea of being able to say, at least in my head, a pair of socks takes 18 hours, which was my usual. That used to be my marker. I'm thinking right now it's going to be more like 14 or 15 hours to knit a pair of socks, because this is, again, without the heel and the toe, it's about 5 hours. So I figure even if it takes an hour to do each of these, if that's going to be 7, so that would be 14 hours. So that's kind of cool though, that I knocked off a bit of time off of my knitting as well, right? It's the first time I knit socks was when I lived in Pittsburgh, which was, I don't know. Okay, so Pittsburgh, we were in Pittsburgh for 3 years. And then we were in Cincinnati for 4 years, and now we've been here for 2 years. So, you know, sometime in there. So anyway, it's been a while. You can see I don't keep track of time the way other people do. Sometimes when I get people who say things like, oh, you should just make me a pair of socks. Usually a random stranger. Did I ever tell you guys a story that I was a little bit snarky? I feel like I've told you this before. Anyway, I'll tell it again in case you didn't hear it, or in case I've just told it to other knitters enough times that I thought it was you all. Anyway, I was at the dentist one day, and I have a permanent retainer, and it needed to be re-glued. So I got my teeth cleaned, and then I had to wait for my turn to get it re-glued. And I pulled my sock out and started knitting a couple of rows. And there was a guy in the waiting room, and he said, you know, what are you making? And I said, oh, a sock. And he said, oh, you should make socks for me. I don't know why I was feeling snarky that day. I don't know what had happened to me. But anyway, normally I would have just smiled and said whatever. But instead I said, oh, I only knit socks for people that I love, but I would be happy to teach you how to knit socks. And then he said back to me, I don't have time to knit, as he sat there scrolling on his phone. I hate it when people say that. It sounds like I have all this leisure time, which isn't true at all. I typically knit when I'm doing something else. So anytime that other people would just be sitting and watching TV, that's usually when I knit, right? That's probably when you guys knit too. And so if you don't have any leisure time to watch TV, that means you also don't have any knitting time. So that kind of just burns my butter. You know what I mean? Anyway, he said, I don't have time to knit. And I said, well, at the end of this wait, I'll have an inch on my sock. And at the end of this wait, you'll have an hour on your phone. And then he didn't say anything else to me for the rest of the day. Isn't that weird? Or the rest of our wait, I guess. So anyway, sometimes I like to know, like I might have snarkily said, it takes me 18 hours to knit a pair of socks. Why would you think it would be appropriate for me? I don't always go into things with a fight. I just want you to know, but just sometimes it burns me. You know, probably you have days like that too. Some days I have more grace to give than others. So I'm working on a sock. Okay, so let's just talk about this for just 1 second. These Scrappy socks, these are all 3 Scrappy socks. So one of the things I love is that, actually, let's do the one that's finished. One of the things I love is that I love that I'm using yarn that I already used for something else. So I think that that's awesome. It's less waste. It feels like a judicious. It feels judicious and sort of angelic for me to do that. I feel really good about doing it. And I don't feel like I need to apologize for my yarn usage because I do knit the yarn that I have, but I just particularly love that I'm doing this. But let's just for a minute talk about how these are all Scrappy socks, but they all look totally different. So there's this one knit with everything different scrap, totally scrapped. And then this one, which is 2 scraps, just, you know, spun together. You can see here, this is the seam of where I twisted the yarns, but then look at that. It looks totally different, but also still scrappy. And then this one, which is essentially, these are self-patterning yarns, so it's not quite as blocky as this. Also, I did try to choose a yarn that sort of went with the next one, which I know this was gifted and they thought that way too, but you know, this is for my own stash. You know how we kind of all choose our own, we keep choosing yarns that we like, we keep choosing colors that we like, we keep choosing. So it's not, I think, surprising that these colors go a little bit. To be honest with you, this one and this one, this was my Christmas sock that I knitted myself last year. And these were, I thought they were kind of Christmassy, but I also think that they sort of look watermelony, and that's why I bought this color. But these two together, if I have enough of them when I'm all done with the sock, I might do a blend like this and just see how that turns out, because that might be kind of fun. There's quite a bit of this, because the first pair that I knit, I did again with this and this and this, the white. So there, I think there were like 48 grams of this left, and it was 100 grams gain to start out with. So added with this, I definitely would have enough to make another pair. And I think I have a teal blue and a hot pink, something like that, that I could do this with to tie it together instead of using the cream. Anyway, I just love that these are all Scrappy socks and that they all look totally different. And isn't it great that we can do something with our scraps? So useful, right? But if you don't knit your scraps, I'm okay with that. The other thing that I'm working on right now is a sweater for my daughter. She has just graduated from college, and I wanted to make her something nice. And she saw this sweater. It's called the Felix Pullover. She saw this in a yarn shop in Spun and wanted it. And to be honest, I kind of want it too. But I was going to knit it with a more sturdy yarn. But she has really sensitive skin. So this is the Woolfolk Tove. I don't know if we've talked about this. This is the Aran weight. I think this is my favorite yarn ever. First of all, just look at the stitch definition there. And then it's made of 6 plies. And then each of those plies, it does a really good job on my hand, right? Well, maybe I'll back this up like this. Each of those plies is double plied. Can you see that? So this is like the roundest yarn I've ever seen. And I just think it makes a beautiful stitch definition. So she also is disproportionately large on top. She has a lot of business going on. So I needed to do bust darts for her, which I had to do the math for. So I figured that out. And then, but she also has a tiny waist, like Barbie. So I had to do a lot of decreases to bring that in. I may have added a little bit too much fabric here. I had her try this on. I'm ready now to do the ribbing. So I'm going to start the ribbing, and then I'll have her try it on again. And I'll see if maybe I need to cinch in a little bit here. I might do like a short faux seam. I don't know if I need to do that. I'm gonna have her try it on first before I do the sleeves again too. But this should go really quickly. It's just not for me, and I'm really bothered. Oh, I guess it's like that with all of them. This must be where I did short rows, because that just doesn't. I'll have to cinch that up with some duplicate stitch. Do I have it on the other side too? No, which means I jacked it up over here, and I never noticed until just now. So I'll probably duplicate stitch or something in there to close those holes up a little bit. Or maybe I'll steam it first and see if they close with blocking. And my guess is that these were a little bit looser. If I do German short rows, and so if you pull it over, I'm tighter on the knit side than the purl, or the other way around, I forget. So that's probably what it is, because it looks beautiful on the back. So I jacked it up right there. Don't worry, I'll think of something for that, and it will look better by the time she wears it. So I'm working on this right now, and it's been slow going for lots of reasons, but one of which is all the math that I've had to do to make it fit. That's all the stuff that's on my needles right now, and the stuff that I finished. Let's now talk about my 2020 knitting. First, I finished 5 sweaters for myself. One is the Tecumseh, which I left at the cottage. The reason I left it at the cottage is that I planned to enter it in the county fair for a prize, because I'm super nerdy like that. I did it in 2019. I really loved the process of doing that. So I had a couple things I was going to put in the fair for this year, but it was canceled. So I just left it there so I wouldn't be tempted to wear it. So I knit a Tecumseh. And then I did a Sayer sweater by Julie Hoover. I knit mine in a cotton. I didn't wear it. I never wore it. I never wore it. It's sleeveless. I think I'm kind of over sleeveless knitting. I wonder if I would like it more if I knit it in something sturdier. Like, as a vest. I don't have any vests right now. There is one that I want to make by Thea Coleman. I think it's called Cranberry Goss, G-O-S, Cranberry Goss. I want to knit that, and it's kind of like a sort of like a poncho vest. I saw someone wearing one once, and it was just the most adorable thing I'd ever seen. So I really want one of those. And it's an Aran weight, so it would go pretty quickly. But I have not knit that yet. Anyway, I would say that I'm not ready to give up on it yet. I didn't really go anywhere last summer, so I didn't wear my hand knits. I think I might have worn them 4 times. We had 4 sessions of outdoor church at Reveiw, and I think I wore a hand knit probably at each one of those, but other than that, I don't think I wore a hand knit. So I'm not going to judge that sweater by last summer simply because it was a weird summer and, you know, I wore a lot of the same type stuff. But we'll talk about that again. Let's revisit that. So that's 2 sweaters. The other 3 were my Frid, which I'm wearing right now, and I love. I wear it a lot. This is made out of Malabrigo Rasta, and it's pilling, but not in the way that you'd expect it to. See, it's kind of like, it's more like matting than pilling. So I wear this a lot, though, a really lot. It was kind of, I feel like it was a little bit expensive to make, and it was kind of an impulse buy, but I wear it a ton, a real ton. It's warmer than you'd think, maybe, but that's why I also shorten the sleeves. It's also loose. You could make it cropped. I don't wear cropped things yet. Maybe I will someday, but I don't at the moment. So, but it's really loose around the bottom, so it does allow for a lot of air movement. And we keep our house during the day at 66, which is pretty cool if you're just sitting. If you're moving around and cleaning and things like that, which is typically what I do, it feels a little bit warm actually. And before the pandemic, I used to keep the house at 63 during the day, which meant that you could never sit during the day. When everybody got home from school and work and what have you in the evenings, I would turn it up to like 66 or 67. And then at night, at bedtime, it goes back down to like 60. You should wear your hand knits in the house. When the kids complain about it being too cold, I tell them. That's why I make them wool things. Frid, big win. Another thing that I made, another sweater that I made myself this year, is this Stash Dive Raglan by Summerlee Knits. And I love it. I wear it a lot. I'm really pleased with it. Again, another great use for scrap yarn. I carried a shelter and then a bunch of different scrap yarns with this. I got rid of a ton of things with this. And it was fun to go back. Like, this was a pair of socks. This was a pair of socks for a friend. I remember that I bought it because it specifically had like green and white and then a little bit of this cranberry color. And it reminded me of like apple picking colors. I don't know why. They were sort of fallish. I made a pair of socks out of this. And then I also made a pie shawl, which I gave to a friend out of this yarn. So see, it's sort of fun to revisit all of this yarn and just see, you know, some of it you can really kind of pick out. Like, this is a summer weight sweater. This is Dandelion by Madeline Tosh. It doesn't matter. I don't have to go through all this with you. But anyway, what I'm saying to you is that this is a fun sweater to make, and I like the shape a lot. It's really generous. It feels like a sweatshirt. It looks a little nicer. I will tell you, every single time I go out, I get a compliment on this whenever I wear this sweater. I've since seen Larkeberger, who has designed sweaters like this too, and then she also has some with beads in them. She's like kind of a high-end, I think, knitter with fashion, like a big fashiony edge. This feels a little bit more comfy, but it does have that sort of cool look to it, I guess. Most people don't see me as a fashionista. On my Instagram, I posted a picture for Christmas. I got Mr. Hansen an inflatable reindeer hat, and then there's rings that you toss onto it. We've been having a fun time with that, just so you can see why people look to me for their fashion guidance. I get a lot of compliments on this. It's really cozy. It's really warm. I like it. It's comfortable. I knit the sleeves a little bit long, so I cuff them most of the time when I wear them. This is exactly what I wanted it to be. So this is another win for 2020 as far as sweaters go for me. And then my third sweater that I have here is my Magnolia Chunky, and I love this. Again, another win. You can see I wear it a lot. It's pilling. See that? It's a really affordable yarn also, the Cascade Eco Wool, I think it's called. It's a really affordable yarn. I wanted this to be exactly what it is. I toss it on regularly over top of a shirt, especially because sometimes I'm one of those ladies who gets a little bit warm suddenly. I don't know if any of that's happening to you all. So if I just wear a shirt and then or if I'm going to go out, you know, at home, I know I can wear this and I'll be comfortable. But when I go out, I might be too warm in something like this, because some people keep their house at like 70 or 75 even, like, which is crazy town. Anyway, if I'm going to leave the house, I oftentimes will choose this. So I do need to glean this, and then once you glean something one time, sometimes that sort of slows everything down. So I'll glean this and then I'll give another report on this yarn. But really, 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 again, very happy with this. And that's one of the things I want to talk about. One of the things I did before I chose these sweaters was I thought carefully about what I want to choose to wear. What am I comfortable in? What kind of shapes do I like? And what do I expect the fabric to do? So I have a closet, not a closet. I definitely have a drawer full of nice sweaters. I have several Shibui sweaters that are very nice and that I used to wear a lot when I worked in the knit shops. But to be honest with you, most of my days now are spent at home. So I don't need, for lots of reasons, I don't need those sweaters. Additionally, how many is enough, right? That's a question I need to ask myself. And maybe it's time to go through some of my winter sweaters and some of my summer sweaters and really like decide if I need them or don't need them. It might be time to do that. I'm not ready to do that right now. I might need to do that pretty soon. It's just something to think about, right? How many sweaters is enough? So those are the sweaters that I made for myself. I also made 2 crop tops, My Little Secret crop tops, and those were both gifts. I made 5 hats. One was entirely out of scraps, which I left at the cottage to keep me warm there, and the other 4 were gifts. I knit 3 scarves or shawls. One was a gift, and then one was for me. This one was for me. This is the Melissa scarf, I think. I love this knit. I choose this the most. So I have this one, and I knitted one in green for myself as well. I choose them the most. They're a very simple, you start here, and then you add. And at the end of every row, every other row maybe, you knit one of these bobbles. At the end of every row, I think, you knit one of these bobbles. And I love it. I love it. I love the way it looks. You can knit it in any weight. This one is, I think, an Aran weight. This was a hand spun that was gifted to me. The other one that I knit was in a DK weight. I love it. I knit one, the green one that I knit myself was, I think, last year. Didn't count towards the 2020 knitting. But I liked it so much that I knitted another one, which was going to be for myself. And then I decided I was going to give it to a friend, which I did. So hers is teal. And then I knit this one. So I knit 2 of these this year. And would be great pandemic knitting. I feel like everybody needs one. Let me show you why. You can wear it 1,000 ways. But my favorite way is just to leave, kind of a good bit. This goes down to just a little bit past the zipper on my jeans. And then look, you just wrap and look, and then look. So then there's enough left to tie it, and see all this texture shows up with the little bob, and you can fold it or not. And this looks great. And I didn't even zhuzh it or anything. I just tied it, right? And then you can also, it looks great like this. And then you can, again, tie it loosely and then leave these hang if you want. You can, just drape it around your neck if you need to, because it's great like that. My daughter actually wore it the other day. We had outside church and Christmas, and she wore it like this to keep her warm because it was cold. Which, again, look at these little bobbles. They frame your face. Look, you can see now, again, why I'm an influencer when it comes to fashion. Everybody's looking here for their guidance. Look at, that's actually not that terrible if I was really cold, right? So anyway, I love it. I think it is fantastic. And definitely also another win for 2020. I knit 1 pair of mittens. They were for my neighbor who lives across the street from me. She has some special needs and has a difficult time wearing thumbs, so I made her thumbless mittens that were personalized and custom to her. I really liked doing that. Not that long ago, I posted a link on my Instagram. There's a woman who organizes knitters who are able and willing to knit for people who have not standard size or standard shape hands. And I posted a link to that on my Instagram page. And I'll see if I can do that again here, because what a worthy cause. We all know, knitters know, that knitting an item for another person is the quite literal definition of couture. There's only one, and it's knitted exactly for that person. But I think that that resounds especially with someone who's difficult to fit, and also something like mittens. Who wants to go outside with cold hands? I don't. I bring mittens everywhere. I'm a little passionate about that. So anyway, I found this group after I had already knit these mittens. It was the single most satisfying knit that I did the whole year. I knit 2 pairs of wrist warmers, which I gave away. I knit 1 bath mat, which we used in our bathroom, and I loved, out of, again, scraps. Super satisfying. I knit ornaments this year. I think I knit about 30 of them. I didn't really take a good count. Most of them were gifted, but I did save 4 of the little snowmen that I made for our tree, and I saved 3 little Christmas trees for our tree, and then 1 little sock was knit I added 8 new ornaments to our tree, and then the rest were gifted. But I didn't take a good count because every so often I would just kind of squeak another one in. And then I knit these scrubbies. Remember these? I knit a total of 18 of these, and I knit, let's see, are there 8 here? I knit a total of 8 of these dishcloths. So all of these were just meant to be gifts. I still have all of the dishcloths. Well, I gave some others away, so I must not have done a good job of keeping track. I did give a few away this summer as a birthday gift in May. So I still have these 8, and then I have 4 scrubbies left of this. So this is my box of like gifted knits that I made this year, not including the scrubbies that I gave away. I gifted, oh, I didn't tell you, I also knit 9 pair of socks, 9 pairs. And then I have the 1 scrappy sock that's done in here. And then I knitted 1 holiday sock, which ultimately is going to be an ornament, but I counted it in the socks right now. I do need to make the other one, but because I put beads on the bottom of it, it definitely has to be an ornament. So the second one will also be an ornament. So I don't know if I should include those in socks or not, but they're really only half done anyway. So they won't count unless I finish them in the next couple days. So I knit 9 pairs of socks total this year. The sum of my gift knitting this year was that I gave away 5 pairs of socks. I gave away 2 pairs of wrist warmers, 1 pair of mittens, 1 shawl or scarf, 2 crop tops, 4 hats, and then most of the scrubbies were given away, and also ornaments. So I feel pretty good with my gift knitting this year. And then just for fun, I thought I would show you some of the things that are in my gift knitting from last year, which was 2 more dishcloths. So I think what I'm going to do is, this is made with the Rowan cotton. It's really soft, and you can see like it's not firm. These would be good. I mean, my daughter uses these on her face. So I call them dishcloths, but the truth is these are soft enough to be face cloths. This is that cotton that you can get like at Michael's. I can't remember the name of it, but it's for dishcloths, and it's kind of a firm cotton, and you can see it. I don't know if you can see. This is like a lot drapier. Can you see that? Like, this is much drapier than this. It's thinner and finer and softer. This definitely, I think, is a dishcloth. Or you could use it on your body, but you wouldn't want to use it on your face necessarily. It doesn't feel soft enough for your face. Or maybe if you have young skin, you could use it like as an exfoliator. But anyway, so I still have a bunch of these. I was thinking that these would be really good gifts, like with a bar of soap and then a handmade soap or a really nice French milled soap, something fancy. So this, and then kind of just fold it over and use this as a wrapping with a ribbon. I think that would be a really nice gift for like a friend's birthday or a Mother's Day gift. So I don't have a mother, but I have lots of women in my lives who are like my mothers. You know who you are, and offer me that kind of wisdom, etc. So I don't know. Look, you can see I have quite a few of them, and again, this one was from last year. Incidentally, these dishcloths are my sister-in-law's favorite of all dishcloths, and she does use them for dishcloths. I will say I have some crocheted dishcloths that I use that were hand crocheted, and they were a gift for me. They're thick, and when they dry, they always have that smell about them. No big deal, because I just throw them in the washing machine, and I use about a half a cup of baking soda in all my laundry to get away any smells or anything like that. So I don't worry about that, but they just don't dry very well. These dry better, so they don't get that kind of weird odor. Although I'm sure you guys probably have a great trick for keeping those odors away. But anyway, the point is I have this many and those will all be gifts. These were, this was a tube, a knitting tube, and I added toes and heels and tops. This is from last year. So these are a gift. They're in the gift box. I don't know who they're for, but somebody's got a birthday coming up, so they could be for her. And I also knit these little, I just had this ball of yarn and I thought I wanted to knit it up one day. And also I was cold in bed, and so I thought I needed a pair of these. And so I made a pair for myself. And I don't know what happened, but one of mine is bigger than, oh, I know, I ran out of yarn. And so one is bigger than the other because I jacked around with them ultimately. But these would be great, you know, as a gift. Again, a nice gift for somebody. Just perfect little wrist warmers or texture gloves or what have you. So they just happen to be in there because the right person hasn't come in yet. These are the, I think they're called MAIZE by Tin Can Knits. So they're mostly garter, and then there's this one little ridge here. And what's great about these is they were a bit of a stretch to put on my hand. And I have an average, I think, woman's size hand. So these would be good for like a teenager, tweenager person too, because they're kind of snug, but they also are good for, you know, grown-up ladies like us. So I knitted for fun. One of my friends had me doing a gnome along, and it was really fun to do that. But I just had to use the yarn that I had at the cottage, which just happened to be like this. It was a mystery gnome along, so I didn't know what it was going to look like or what we did, but it was really fun to do with a friend because it was a great way for us to connect on a daily basis or every couple of days. And she's a dear friend, but not somebody that takes the time. She doesn't have the time. I don't have the time to connect on a daily basis. So this was a wonderful trip for the both of us to do. And then hers, of course, looked totally different than mine. In the end, of course, I liked hers better. One of the clues was to add, I think, tassels at the bottom, but as soon as I saw these, I went immediately and bought these little bells. Then when I saw my friend's tassel, I really wanted the tassels too. I feel like I made a second one of these actually. I don't know where oh, I did. And I think I gifted it. Anyway, this I thought could be a cute little gift. My daughter had it at college for a while, and when she came home, she gave it back. So that is 2020 knitting, except for last night's knitting adventure. A while back, I went to Vogue Knitting Live. It's over a year now. I really loved going to that. I loved taking the classes, and I went with my knitty friends, and it was so great. And it really was a very formative event in my life. Interesting, isn't it? Anyway, the only thing I bought when I was there, they have a marketplace that was beautiful, and I was very tempted by a lot of things, but I was also on a very strict budget, which is a word I don't like to use. But the only thing that I bought was a Skein Cocaine special, which is kind of this, I think she says there's either 30 or 32. In my head, I think 32 colors, different colors in one skein. And it's just this big mishmash. And it's a beautiful skein of yarn. It's the kind of yarn that you would buy and just like hold on to forever. But I do like to use my yarn. So I knitted it into a pair of socks and loved them. And then I had a little bit of it in my Stash Dive raglan. Oh, it was the second, it's the other yarn. It's the other yarn in this. So this is the special and this is the other yarn. So this is every other row. Yeah. So it was in this. And then I had the tiniest ball left, like really this much. What could this tiny ball be but a tiny sweater? So this is the last of that, the tiny sweater. See that? I did this last night. And then there was a tiny bit more and I thought, oh, maybe I could make another sweater out of it. And so I did. So this one, gauge matters, friends. This is a great lesson in gauge, actually. So the first one, let me start at the beginning. First, I had to go back and find the pattern for this. And I keep it in my Ravelry, and I was just, you know, using it like from the Ravelry page, not printing it. Because usually once I get going, I just kind of have a feeling for it and I can just go with it. It's not a big deal. So I started it, I knitted it on a size 1 needle because that just happened, or 1.5 maybe. That just happened to be what was nearby. And first, the person who wrote this pattern is BLAIR. And if you remember, when I made them last year, I made quite a few. When I made them, I modified the pattern pretty heavily because the pattern originally was written as a doll sweater. And I just needed it to be an ornament. So I didn't add extra stitches under the arm and I didn't do all this other stuff. Also, I got really fussy and I started doing the collar in a rib instead of knitting it just in garter stitch like she has you do. So that was this sweater, okay, which I created into an ornament for my tree. So that's the sweater right here. This was the original sweater. when I went online, I noticed that she'd pulled her pattern off Ravelry, and now it's on her own personal website. And when you click on the Ravelry link, it redirects you to her own personal website. She does not want to share her patterns on Ravelry anymore. And that's her business. But I used that pattern again and realized that the pattern is significantly different. For one, it has you just knitting the collar for 5 rows, which I did in this one. And again, I use a size 1. I think the pattern calls for a size 2. You can see there's a significant difference between her patterns. Okay, so this was, again, the original pattern that I was knitting with, and then this is the modified one that she did. And it's fine. It's fine. And then remember, I went down. This was like a size 1 needle. And I don't remember what this was on, but probably a 2. It feels like maybe a 2. So then I decided, I felt like this was a lot smaller. I was sitting in front of the Christmas tree. This seemed a lot smaller. So then I thought, oh, I'll go up to a size 3 needle. So I did. This one is a size 3 needle. And I ran out of the skein cocaine yarn. But then remember that favorite sock yarn. There was a tiny bit left. From this yarn, there was a tiny small ball left. So I decided that would be perfect with the skein cocaine. And so I did the last 2 rows down here and that. You can't tell at all. And then the sleeves are knit in that. And you can see that there's a difference in them, but it's not a significant difference, I don't think. Most people, I don't think, will notice. Once I cut these threads off, I don't think most people will notice. So this is the same sweater. These 2 are the same. This is knit in a size 1. This is knit in a size 3. So you can see the difference in gauge there. See that? See that? Like that's almost a full finger's width. So you can see that for yourself. It's not so obvious on the sleeves, but it's a bit obvious on the body. And then the rows are the same also, but you can see that this is a bit longer. So the row count is the same. So these are the same. But even in a size 3 needle, this one, size 3 needle, with the original pattern, not the same, which is fine. But I think I prefer this bigger size over this tiny size. The pattern that she has is free, which is great. It just tells you how to set the stitches up on your needle, and then it says increase on either end and doesn't tell you exactly how she wants you to do that. I think in the original pattern it might have said knit front and back. I did a lifted increase and it just ends up with it. See that nice, do you see this nice line here and then here? And again, you get it on the back because you're doing it on each needle, and use 4 needles. So the front, each sleeve, and then the back are all. The way that she has it written now, this neck is a bit wide, I think, but this neck is impossibly small and fussy. Not impossibly, obviously, but it's small and fussy in a way that it doesn't need to be. I think I'm gonna take the idea of this and just write my own because I'm not really that happy. This one you can see I didn't do, I don't know what, I must have done a make one or something because these increases are not as beautiful and these definitely are. So I think I need to futz around with this a little bit and make it exactly what I want it to be, but I definitely want it to be more, I think, closer to this size. I don't know why, but I feel like this in a garland just would be the height of Christmas or something. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Anyway, the point is, I don't know why, but I keep thinking I want a garland of this. But let's be honest. Do I need a whole, like, I don't need my house to look like a yarn bomb either. So I have to think about where I would put that before I do it. But as of right now, they're great ornaments. So I'm, and I could not bear to part with this yarn. I just loved it so much. Well, that's it. We could pontificate on this stuff forever. And this is a really long podcast for me. So I might have to edit the crap out of it. In the end, let's do this. Thanks for watching. Thanks for spending your time with me. Thanks for remembering that I'm a mess. And I'm glad that there's a lot of knitters out there that share their knitting on podcasts. It makes me feel a little bit less lonely, especially in the pandemic. I hope you feel a little less lonely. I hope when you think back on your 2020 knitting that you are really happy with at least 50% of what you created and hopefully more. And I hope that you take what you know from your 2020 knitting and make your 2021 knitting even better. I'm really not good about sending you off with thoughtful things like the fat squirrel, really. She's known for that. She does a good job. If we were here, if you were together with me, if we were literally sitting at my house and knitting, I would send you off with a piece of cake and a great big hug. So let's just pretend I did that. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope you guys have an awesome, awesome rest of your day.